were halfway through our road trip when we made the worst decision of our lives. It was supposed to be a fun, carefree summer adventure. Just 3 of us, me, Jake, and Devin, driving from Denver to San Diego, blasting music, living off gas station snacks, and crashing in motels along the way. We'd planned the route months in advance, stuck mostly to the highways, and avoided any detours. But when traffic on E70 slowed to a dead stop just past Grand Junction, we got impatient. That's when Devin said it. "I know a shortcut." Those 4 words should have been enough to stop us, but we were tired, restless, and overconfident. Devin pulled out his phone, showing us a thin gray line on Google Maps that snaked through the forest toward Route 50. It looked isolated, sure, but legit. Paved, just a different way around the jam. Jake, who was driving, shrugged. "Let's do it." The sun was still up when we exited the main road and turned onto the so-called shortcut. At first, it wasn't bad. Narrow, yeah, but smooth. Trees lined both sides, thick and tall, the kind of scenery you'd see on a postcard. Jake turned down the music a bit as we drove deeper, and the mood inside the car quieted. "You sure this is the right way?" I asked after about 15 minutes. Devin nodded, still showing up on the map. But I noticed something strange. No cars passed us from the other direction, no road signs, no mile markers, just trees, and more trees. About half an hour in, we saw a mailbox, just one, old, wooden, the kind that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. No house around it, just that lonely mailbox on the side of the road. "That's weird," Jake muttered. We kept driving. Another 10 minutes passed. Still no houses, no signs, and still no cars. The trees started to grow denser, taller. The sky, though still blue above us, barely reached the road through the thick branches. And then, our phones all buzzed, no signal. "Damn," Devin said, tapping his screen. "We're in a dead zone." I was getting nervous. My gut told me we should turn around. But Jake kept going, his knuckles tight on the wheel. Then we saw it. A deer, lying in the middle of the road, still. Bloody. Fresh. Jake hit the brakes hard. The car skidded a little, but we stopped in time. The deer wasn't mangled like roadkill. It looked like it had been laid there. Its eyes were open, glassy, watching. "Something's off," I said quietly. We went around it. A mile later, we passed a wooden sign on the side of the road, nearly hidden by overgrowth. It didn't have any words on it, just a red handprint. Faded, but visible. We all saw it. No one said a word. The deeper we drove, the darker it got. Even though the sun hadn't set yet, the trees on both sides seemed to lean inward. Jake turned on the headlights. "Maybe we should turn around," I finally said. Devin checked his phone again. Still no signal. Too late now. We're closer to Route 50 than going back. But I wasn't sure. I started watching the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone or something following us. And that's when I saw it. A car, far behind us, headlights faint through the trees. Jake saw it too. Finally, someone else. But Devin leaned forward, squinting. "No, that car's been behind us since the deer." I turned around, my stomach tightening. "What?" Jake sped up a little. The car behind us did too. We tried to convince ourselves it was just a coincidence, but every turn we made, it followed. Always staying far enough to not be clear, but close enough to be noticed. And then we passed that same mailbox again. That same broken wooden post. That same bent flag. Same number carved on the side. "No, no, no," I whispered. "We've been driving straight. That's not possible." Jake slammed the brakes. We're going in circles." Devin looked pale. "But I haven't touched the GPS." We looked at each other, three guys who had thought this would be the trip of a lifetime. We were right, just not the kind of lifetime we imagined. Jake slowly pulled the car to the side of the road. For a moment, none of us said anything. We just stared at the mailbox. Same crack in the wood, same tilt to the left, same number, 32. "We didn't turn," I said. "We didn't loop back. We never turned." Jake's jaw clenched. "Then how the hell are we back here?" Behind us, the other car stopped too. Its headlights stayed on, but no one got out. Devin in the back seat reached slowly for his phone again. Still no signal. "I think we should turn around," he said. "Just drive back the way we came." "No," I said. "Whatever this is, it's not the road." Jake nodded slowly and hit the gas. We turned the car around and headed back the way we thought we had come. But the trees, they looked the same, every single one. Every bend in the road felt like déjà vu. And within 15 minutes, we saw the mailbox again. Same place, same tilt, same number, 32. Jake cursed and pounded the steering wheel. "This is impossible!" Devin's voice shook. "What if we're not lost? What if we're stuck?" The headlights from the car behind us suddenly flickered, then shut off. We all turned around. Darkness. It was just gone. No car, no lights, nothing but black trees and empty road. "Okay, what the actual—" Jake started, but then we heard it. Tap, tap, tap on the rear windshield. We all whipped around. There was nothing there. Jake floored it. The tires screeched as we sped down the road, blindly now. Every branch seemed to reach for us. The woods weren't silent anymore. They creaked and cracked and whispered. Somewhere deep inside, I knew something was watching. We drove fast for what felt like hours. Then we saw it. A figure in the road, up ahead. Jake swerved hard, almost crashing into a tree. The car jolted, throwing us sideways. We stopped inches from the ditch. "Did you see that?" "A person," Devin whispered. I swear it was a person. I got out of the car. "Are you insane?" Jake shouted. But I had to see. I had to know. The road behind us was empty, quiet. But I felt eyes. My skin prickled. My breath fogged in front of me, though it wasn't cold. Then from the trees, I heard it. A voice. Not loud, not angry, just sad. "You weren't supposed to come here." I spun around. No one. I backed toward the car, heart pounding. Suddenly Devin screamed from inside. He jumped in, slamming the door behind me. What is it?" He was staring at his phone. "It turned on. I have signal." Jake pulled over and we all looked. It was true. One bar, just one. But it was something. "Drop a pin," I said. "Do something, anything." Devin opened his Maps app, but what loaded made our blood freeze. There was no road, just a green field, nothing else, like we didn't exist. Then the screen glitched, froze, shut off, gone, back to no signal. Jake started the car again, but it wouldn't turn over. He tried again, nothing. I looked around. We were in the middle of nowhere, no car behind us, no figures on the road, just the trees and the silence. And then the radio turned on by itself, static. Then a faint voice like an old recording. "Leave before it's too late." The voice repeated again and again. We all stared at it, too afraid to touch it. Then without warning, the car engine roared to life. Jake didn't wait. He hit the gas. We didn't know where we were going. We just drove, past trees that looked familiar, past the mailbox one more time, past the red handprint sign, and just when I thought we'd never escape, a light up ahead, a real one. We burst out of the woods and onto a familiar highway. Cars, bright sky, civilization. Jake pulled over immediately. We sat there, breathing hard, shaking, staring at each other in disbelief. Devin checked his phone again. Full bars, but no dropped pin, no history, no record of that road. It had vanished, just like everything else in there. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive, not until we reached the next gas station, about 20 miles down the highway. It was bright, modern, full of people. The kind of place that felt so normal, it made what happened to us seem like a hallucination. Jake got out to fill the tank, while Devin and I went inside. We grabbed water, snacks, anything to help us feel grounded. But everyone around us felt off. A woman at the counter kept glancing at us. A man by the coffee machine stopped pouring and stared as we walked by. A child outside pressed his face to the glass, following our every step. Devin leaned in. "Are they looking at us?" "Yeah," I said. "I feel it too." Jake came in, eyes wide. "The car! Guys, come look at the car!" We ran outside. The car was different, covered in dirt, branches, deep scratches all along the sides, like it had been dragged through a forest for days. The back windshield was cracked. But worst of all, handprints, red, faint, but visible, smudged across the hood, on the trunk, on the windows. "We didn't see that before," Devin whispered. Jake was shaking. "I cleaned the windshield when we stopped earlier. There were no prints." People were staring again, but none of them said a word. We left as fast as we could. That night we booked a motel outside of Moab. It was clean, quiet, far from any trees, but we couldn't sleep. The radio kept turning on by itself. The bathroom light flickered. My phone vibrated at 3:12 a.m. with a notification. "You're still there." I opened it. Nothing. No app. No message. Just the screen and my reflection. Devin said he dreamed of the mailbox over and over. Jake swore he heard whispering outside his window. In the morning we tried to talk it out. Maybe it was trauma. Maybe we imagined some of it. Maybe the road was just some backwoods nightmare we stumbled into. But then Jake checked the car again, the odometer. It showed 0.2 miles, that's all. "We drove for hours," I said. "Exactly," he replied. He looked sick. We left that motel without breakfast, drove in silence the rest of the way to San Diego. When we got there, we told no one what happened. Not our parents, not our friends, not even each other. A week later, Devin stopped answering texts. I went to check on him. His apartment door was open. No sign of struggle, no note, no Devin. But on his wall, scratched into the paint, was the number 32. Jake tried to act normal. He got a job, started dating someone. But I saw the fear in his eyes every time he passed a tree-lined road. Last I heard, he moved out of state, disconnected completely, deleted social media. Sometimes I think about calling him, but I'm afraid he won't answer, or worse, someone else will. As for me, well, I still see the mailbox, not in the woods, not in real life, but in dreams, on corners, in reflections, in moments between blinks. And sometimes I hear the voice. "You weren't supposed to come here." And I know. We never really left. I was supposed to be at Ryan's party by midnight. I'd planned it all week. Leave work by 6, hit the freeway, and drive straight through. A 5-hour solo trip through the Nevada desert wasn't exactly fun, but I had my playlists, an energy drink, and a tank full of gas. By the time I crossed into the real dark stretch of highway, my phone had already lost service, but I didn't care. This was my little escape. The stars looked insane out there. and there was something peaceful about being alone on that endless black top. Around 10 p.m., I saw the sign for my exit, Route 47. But before I could merge, a truck swerved into my lane. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering. By the time I recovered, I'd already missed the exit. "Shit," I muttered. I drove another mile or so before spotting an old faded green sign. Next exit, 2 miles. Perfect. I'd turn around, no big deal. But when I reached that next exit, there wasn't a number or town name. Just a small sign with white letters, "Return Weird." But I took it anyway. The ramp dipped sharply, almost like a roller coaster. My headlights barely touched the bottom before I felt the road flatten again. I expected to merge onto a service road or some country highway, but instead, I found myself on a narrow 2-lane road. The asphalt looked cracked and rough, with weeds pushing up in places. No lights, no signs, just the moon above and my headlights cutting through the dark. Probably just a shortcut, I told myself. But after about 10 minutes, I realized I hadn't seen a single turnoff, house, or car. Then I saw the first sign. It was an old wooden board stuck into the dirt on the right side. The paint was peeling, but I could still read it. "Welcome back." Back? Back where? I laughed nervously, assuming it was some dumb prank. A few minutes later, another sign. "Turn around." My stomach twisted a little. I looked in my mirrors, nothing but darkness behind me. I kept driving. I don't know why. Maybe because turning around felt like admitting I was scared. Another sign. "It's not too late." My pulse started to quicken. The voice in my head screamed at me to stop, but I pushed forward. At one point, I thought I saw something move on the side of the road, like a person stepping just out of the beam of my headlights. "You're just tired," I whispered to myself. But I felt it. That deep, electric sense that I was being watched. Then the road curved, and my headlights swept across something that made my whole body freeze. A figure, just standing there, in the middle of the road. It looked human, but too still. Like a mannequin. Its head tilted slightly, and it had no facial features I could make out. I slammed the brakes so hard I almost skidded off the road. When I looked back up, it was gone. I sat there, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My breath fogged up the windshield. I forced myself to keep going. But my mind was gone, lost somewhere between fear and disbelief. After another mile or so, I noticed something even stranger. My gas gauge was dropping rapidly. I'd filled up before leaving. No way it could be almost empty already. Then my headlights caught another sign. "Welcome back." I'd looped. Somehow. I checked my phone again, still no signal. My heart pounded. My hands shook. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone on that road. I couldn't stop staring at that sign. "Welcome back." It felt like a cruel joke. I drove for at least 10 more minutes, but each bend looked exactly like the last. The same twisted trees, the same broken asphalt, the same moonlight filtering through the branches. I turned on the radio, desperate for some noise, anything to drown out the pounding in my head. But it only produced static. Then through the static, I heard something that made my skin crawl. "Turn around, turn around, turn around." A whispering voice repeating again and again, getting clearer, almost as if someone was speaking directly into my ear. I ripped the cord from the radio, but the whisper didn't stop. It echoed inside my skull. I gripped the wheel and pressed harder on the gas, praying I'd find an exit. Then I saw them, figures on both sides of the road, dozens of them, just standing there unmoving, their heads tilted, watching me. Their outlines looked human, but their proportions were wrong. Arms too long, heads too narrow. As I sped past, I thought I saw their heads slowly turn to follow me. My breathing turned into sharp gasps. My eyes darted to the mirrors, expecting to see one of them inside the car. Then the road dipped again, and I realized I was back at the same return sign where I'd first turned off. My headlights illuminated it for just a moment before it vanished behind me. I thought about turning around, but I couldn't. My body felt frozen, like I was trapped in some nightmare loop. I kept driving. The temperature inside the car started to drop. I could see my breath even though the heater was on full blast. My fingers felt numb, my teeth chattered, but I didn't dare stop. I didn't want to see what might crawl out of those trees if I did. Then, up ahead, I noticed a faint glow, a small gas station sign flickering in the distance. Relief flooded through me like warm water. I pulled in so fast I nearly crashed into the pump. The station looked abandoned. Rusty pumps, a broken sign that read, "Open," even though all the lights inside were off. I ran to the door, banging on the glass. "Hello? Anyone?" No answer. I pressed my face to the window. The inside looked dusty with empty shelves and overturned chairs. Then I saw movement in the back, a shadow slipping behind the counter. I slammed the door again. "Please, I need help." Finally, a figure emerged, an old man with deep wrinkles and eyes that looked completely gray. He unlocked the door slowly, like he wasn't in any hurry. "You shouldn't be here," he said, in a voice so flat it barely sounded human. I just need directions," I stammered. "I got lost. I took some exit. I just need to get back to the highway." The old man stared at me, unblinking. Then he shook his head. "Once you're on this road, there's no way back. You chose to come here." I backed away. "What do you mean?" "This is a road. There has to be a way." He stepped closer. I saw his hands. Long, bony fingers, each nail yellowed and cracked. "They know you now," he whispered. "They've seen you." Then he shut the door in my face, turning the lock with a final click. I stood there, shaking. My mind refused to accept it. There had to be a way out. I turned and sprinted back to my car. As I reached it, I noticed something that nearly made me collapse. Fingerprints, hundreds of them, smeared all over the windows and hood, as if a crowd had pressed their hands against the car while I was inside. I jumped in, locked the doors, and peeled out of the gas station lot. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just had to move. As I drove, I felt it again. That cold, that sense of being watched, like eyes pressed against my skull. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw someone sitting in my back seat. I turned around. Nothing. But the seatbelt was buckled. I floored it, tearing down that endless, cracked road. My heart hammered so hard I thought my ribs might split open. The forest on both sides seemed to close in tighter and tighter, branches clawing at the edges of my headlights. I checked the rearview mirror every few seconds. I kept expecting to see that shape again. Someone sitting calmly in the back seat, watching. Each glance felt like a gamble with my sanity. Then my headlights swept across another sign. "Welcome back." I screamed, slamming the steering wheel. I must have circled this loop a dozen times now. Every turn felt like falling deeper into a nightmare. I forced myself to think. There had to be something I missed. The old man's words echoed in my mind. "They know you now. They've seen you." What did that mean? Who were they? Suddenly my car jolted. I looked down. The gas gauge hit empty. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. Silence swallowed me. The trees around me looked darker now, almost alive. The moonlight felt colder, as if the whole world was holding its breath. I sat there in the dark, gripping the wheel. Then I heard it, soft tapping on the window. At first I thought it was a branch, then another tap, and another. I turned my head, and my stomach dropped. Outside my window, a pale face pressed against the glass, eyes completely black, a crooked, twisted smile that seemed to stretch too far. I tried to start the car again. Nothing. I slammed my fist on the ignition, screamed, but the face outside didn't move. It just kept staring, tapping gently, like it was waiting. Then I heard more tapping, from the other side, and then from behind me. I looked around and saw more faces, dozens of them, surrounding the car. Their hands glided across the glass, leaving streaks like frost. They started whispering. I couldn't understand the words, but they crawled into my mind, filling every corner. I shut my eyes tight, covered my ears, and screamed. When I opened them, they were gone. I looked around, empty road, no faces, no tapping, just silence. My car suddenly started again, headlights flickering on. My hands trembled as I put it into gear and drove forward, slow at first, then faster and faster. After what felt like an hour, I saw something different. A glowing green freeway sign up ahead. Interstate 47, 1 mile. Relief exploded inside me. I pressed the gas, ignoring the tears running down my cheeks. When I reached the ramp, I didn't even look back. I just merged onto the highway, surrounded by the normal hum of late-night truckers and distant tail lights. I drove until sunrise. Only then did I pull over at a rest stop, hands still shaking. I checked my phone. Service restored. Dozens of messages from Ryan asking where I was. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked sunken, skin pale, as if I hadn't slept in days. I told myself it was over. I escaped. But when I got home later that day, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the back seat, there was a single faint handprint. Small, pale. It wasn't mine. We thought it would be a perfect detour. Me and Kyle had been driving all day across the back roads of Oregon, blasting old rock playlists and talking about everything from girls to the weirdest ghost stories we'd heard as kids. We were heading to this massive outdoor music festival, and we figured, why not camp out one night before we got there? We found this random forest spot on a camping app. No reviews, no photos, just a pin dropped on a map with the words, quiet, secluded, free. That sounded perfect to us. We wanted a real adventure, away from crowded campsites and screaming kids. We arrived just before sunset. The forest looked beautiful at first. Tall pines, soft moss on the ground, and a crisp smell of earth and pine needles. We set up our small blue tent, gathered some dead wood, and started a fire. For a while, it was exactly how I pictured it. We roasted cheap hot dogs, joked about Kyle's bad sense of direction, and shared beers we'd stashed in the cooler. The orange glow of the fire danced on the trees, making the forest look alive in a comforting way. Around midnight, we were both leaning back, staring at the stars. That's when I heard it. "Dude, did you hear that?" Kyle sat up, eyes wide. There was a faint voice coming from the trees. It sounded like me. "Hey man, did you hear that?" The exact same words I'd just said. I laughed, thinking it was some echo or maybe Kyle messing around. But his face told me he wasn't joking. Then we heard it again. This time, it was Kyle's voice, repeating something he'd said minutes earlier. "Bro, stop messing with me," he snapped, standing up and looking into the dark. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it between the trees. The beam cut through the darkness, but there was nothing, just branches swaying slightly in the breeze. I felt a chill run through me, the kind that crawls up your spine and makes your hair stand on end. Suddenly we heard footsteps, heavy, slow, crunching on the leaves, circling the camp. Kyle swung the flashlight in every direction. I picked up a big stick from the firewood pile, gripping it so hard my knuckles turned white. Then just beyond the edge of the light, I saw it. A figure, tall, broad shoulders, standing perfectly still. At first I thought it was an animal, but then it stepped forward, and I swear to God, it looked like me. Same height, same building, even the same jacket I was wearing. I stumbled back, almost falling into the fire. Kyle screamed, and when I looked at him, he was pale as a ghost. "It's you. It's you," he kept whispering, backing away. I turned back, but the figure was gone. We stood there in silence, hearts pounding so loud I thought the whole forest could hear us. Then we heard it, both of us at the same time, our own voices, whispering from every direction, mocking us, repeating every word we'd said all night. We grabbed what we could, stuffed it into the car, and threw the tent into the trunk without even folding it. I jumped into the driver's seat, Kyle next to me, both of us shaking so bad I almost dropped the keys. As I turned the ignition, I looked into the trees one last time. They were full of shapes, dozens of them, all standing silently, watching us. I slammed the car into reverse so fast, we almost crashed into a tree behind us. Kyle kept yelling, "Go, go!" like I didn't already have my foot pressed all the way down. We tore down that narrow forest path, branches scraping against the sides, the headlights flickering over the endless rows of trees. My hands were shaking so badly I almost drove us straight into the ditch. When we finally hit the main road, I felt a wave of relief, like we had just escaped a burning building. But it didn't last long. About a mile later, Kyle glanced in the side mirror and went dead silent. "Dude, there's someone behind us." I looked. In the dim red glow of the taillights, I saw shapes. Tall figures, stepping out onto the road behind us, slowly, one by one. They moved in unison, like they shared one mind. They didn't run, they didn't chase, they just watched. I pushed the car even faster. Trees blurred past, and I kept checking the mirror every few seconds. Every time, more shapes appeared, now lining both sides of the road. We finally reached a gas station. The bright fluorescent lights felt like salvation. We jumped out of the car and ran inside, breathless, stammering to the clerk about someone following us. The clerk, an old woman with thin white hair and sharp eyes, just stared at us blankly. "You boys camp up there in Hollow Creek?" she asked in a voice so calm it felt unreal. I nodded, my throat too dry to answer. She shook her head slowly. "You shouldn't have stopped there. You brought them back with you now." I felt my blood freeze. Kyle started to cry right there on the floor, mumbling, "What do we do? What do we do?" The clerk pointed to the door. "Leave. Keep driving. Don't stop. Don't listen to them." I grabbed Kyle and pulled him back to the car. The shapes were closer now, right at the edge of the station's parking lot. I could almost make out their faces, each one twisted into an unnatural grin, like masks pulled too tight over skulls. We sped off again, this time flying down the highway at almost 90 miles an hour. My eyes stung from the tears and sweat, but I didn't dare slow down. Kyle sat beside me, staring at the floor, hands covering his ears. "They're talking to me," he kept repeating. "They're in my head." I reached over, shaking him, but he didn't respond. His eyes were glazed over, mouth hanging open, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw a highway sign. Next town, 15 miles. I pressed even harder on the gas. The figures had disappeared from the mirrors, but I felt them, like they were sitting in the back seat with us, whispering right into our bones. Kyle suddenly looked at me and smiled. "You hear it too now, don't you?" That voice. It wasn't Kyle's. I nearly swerved off the road in shock. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at him again. We finally rolled into town at sunrise. I pulled over near a diner, threw the car in park, and jumped out. I ran around to Kyle's door, ready to drag him out. But the seat was empty. My best friend was gone. No sign of him, no door opening. Just gone. I stood there, shaking, looking down the empty highway. A soft breeze brushed past me, carrying faint echoes of laughter. Our laughter from the camp. I don't know what really happened that night, or if I ever truly left that forest. All I know is, I still hear them, and sometimes, late at night, I hear Kyle calling my name from the dark.